September 11th, 2001. A clear, peaceful Tuesday morning. The kind of morning that made the city feel alive, almost invincible. The skies above the East Coast were a perfect blue, untouched by a single cloud. Across America, millions began their day as they always did. Coffee brewed in kitchens, alarms buzzed in apartments, and news anchors spoke of politics and weather. Nothing out of the ordinary. In New York City, the towers of the World Trade Center glistened in the morning light, twin symbols of ambition and strength. Below them, the streets of Lower Manhattan were already crowded with commuters, unaware that in just a few hours, these towers would become the center of the world's attention, for all the wrong reasons. At Boston's Logan International Airport, American Airlines Flight 11 prepared for takeoff. The flight was bound for Los Angeles, a routine 6-hour trip across the country. Business travelers checked emails, families flipped through magazines, and flight attendants went over safety procedures they had done countless times before. Among the passengers were 5 men who blended in perfectly. Quiet, polite, and calm. To everyone around them, they looked like any other travelers. But inside, their purpose was cold and deliberate. They weren't headed to Los Angeles. Their destination was something far darker. At the same time, across other airports, 3 more flights prepared for their own journeys. United Airlines Flight 175, also bound for Los Angeles. American Airlines Flight 77, departing Washington Dulles Airport for the same destination. And United Airlines Flight 93, leaving Newark, New Jersey, a little behind schedule. 19 men in total, 4 planes, 1 coordinated mission. They moved quietly, each with assigned roles. Pilots, enforcers, muscle. Years of planning and training had led to this day, a day they believed would make them martyrs. Security checkpoints were routine back then. Shoes stayed on, liquids didn't matter, and cockpit doors were left unlocked in flight. The system was built on trust. Trust that no one would ever use a passenger plane as a weapon. By 8 a.m., all 4 aircraft were in motion, climbing toward the morning sky. Air traffic controllers watched their radar screens, unaware that 4 blinking dots were carrying more than passengers and luggage. They were carrying history. New York City went about its day. Offices opened, elevators hummed, and the world moved as if nothing was wrong. The Pentagon buzzed with morning meetings. Children sat in classrooms. And somewhere above the East Coast, 4 planes followed their flight paths. For the last time. No one knew that within the next 2 hours, these ordinary flights would change the course of human history. Forever. At 8:14 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 stopped responding to air traffic control. Controllers in Boston tried again and again, their voices calm but uncertain. American 11, climb and maintain 350. No reply. Inside the plane, chaos had already begun. Flight attendants quietly phoned their colleagues on the ground, their voices trembling. They reported stabbings, passengers bleeding, and the cockpit door forced open. One attendant whispered that the hijackers had sprayed something in the cabin, possibly mace, and that the pilots were unresponsive. In the air traffic center, a voice suddenly broke through the radio. It wasn't the pilot. It wasn't even meant for them. A hijacker's voice came through the open frequency, calm but chilling. "We have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay." It was Mohammed Atta, the man leading the first hijacking. His message, meant for the passengers, had accidentally gone out over the radio. The first moment the world glimpsed the horror to come. Controllers looked at each other, confused. Did he just say planes? Plural. Something unthinkable was happening, but no one yet understood what. Minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 began to veer off course. The same eerie silence followed. Its transponder code changed, its altitude dropped, and flight attendants also reported passengers stabbed, the cockpit taken. 2 planes, both out of Boston, both headed for Los Angeles, both hijacked within minutes. On radar screens, the 2 aircraft appeared as ghostly blips, descending toward New York. Controllers and military radar teams scrambled to respond, trying to make sense of what looked like a coordinated assault unfolding in real time. At 8:46 a.m., without warning, Flight 11 tore through the morning sky and slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, between floors 93 and 99. A massive fireball erupted from the building, scattering debris and glass across the lower Manhattan. People in the streets froze. Some thought it was an accident, maybe a small private plane, maybe an explosion. But the fire told another story. Television cameras rushed to the scene, broadcasting live images of the burning tower. Reporters speculated. Emergency crews mobilized. Thousands began evacuating the South Tower, unsure of what was happening or what was about to happen next. At 9:03 a.m., just 17 minutes later, a silver shape appeared in the clear blue sky. United Airlines Flight 175 banked sharply, and before the eyes of the entire world, plowed into the South Tower. The explosion sent flames hundreds of feet into the air. The second impact erased all doubt. This was no accident. The United States was under attack. As the Twin Towers burned, confusion turned to terror. People watched live as ordinary passenger planes became weapons, and the world in that moment changed forever. As the nation struggled to comprehend the morning's chaos, air traffic controllers were grappling with an impossible situation. Two more commercial airliners had disappeared from radar, leaving no immediate explanation. The terror was far from over. American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757 departing from Washington Dulles International Airport bound for Los Angeles, had veered dramatically off course. The flight path defied logic, climbing and turning in ways that startled controllers. At 9:37 a.m., the plane struck the western side of the Pentagon with devastating force. The impact ripped through the outer wall of the Department of Defense's headquarters, one of the most fortified buildings in the world. The explosion instantly killed all 64 passengers and crew on board, along with 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. Flames erupted through the Pentagon's outer facade, thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, confronting a nightmare of fire, debris, and casualties. Rescue efforts were immediately complicated by the scale of the destruction, as portions of the building's structure collapsed under the impact. The Pentagon, symbol of America's military might, now lay scarred and smoldering, a stark emblem of vulnerability. Across the country, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, made an unprecedented and historic decision. In a move that had never been executed before, the FAA ordered all civilian aircraft within the United States to land immediately. Airports across the nation scrambled to accommodate the grounded flights, passengers bewildered and frightened as news of the attack spread. Air traffic controllers coordinated the massive operation under extreme pressure, ensuring that millions of passengers were safely brought to the ground. The nation's skies, usually bustling with planes, fell eerily silent. But the nightmare was not yet complete. At this moment, a fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, remained in the air. Departing from Newark, New Jersey, bound for San Francisco, this aircraft had also been hijacked. Unlike the others, however, the passengers on Flight 93 were becoming aware of the attacks on New York and the Pentagon through phone calls and text messages to loved ones. Realizing the grim reality, they began to organize a response. In a heroic and desperate effort, the passengers attempted to regain control of the aircraft from the hijackers. Their courage would ultimately alter the intended target of destruction, preventing yet another catastrophic strike on Washington, D.C. As chaos unfolded, the world watched in horror. News networks broadcast the destruction in real time, while families waited in fear for word of loved ones. The attacks of September 11, 2001, were unprecedented in scale and audacity. One by one, the targets of terror were revealed: the Twin Towers of New York City, the Pentagon, and potentially other key landmarks. The morning of September 11th would go down in history as a moment when the United States confronted its vulnerability, its resilience, and the unthinkable courage of ordinary people rising to extraordinary challenges. United Airlines Flight 93 lifted off late from Newark, New Jersey, bound for San Francisco. At first, it seemed like an ordinary flight, passengers chatting, reading, and preparing for a routine journey across the country. But within minutes, that ordinary day turned into extraordinary heroism. Shortly after takeoff, the hijackers forced their way into the cockpit. The calm of the cabin shattered. Passengers soon realized something horrifying. This plane was not headed west. It was hijacked, its course altered, and it was likely part of a larger attack. Using the onboard phones, several passengers called loved ones and airline personnel. They learned the full scope of the morning's events, that planes had struck the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. The news was devastating, but it also gave them crucial information. Their plane was intended for a high-profile target in Washington, D.C., possibly the Capitol or the White House. In those minutes of chaos, ordinary citizens made extraordinary decisions. A plan formed. They would not go quietly. They would fight back. Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, and other brave passengers led the charge. On the phone, Beamer whispered, "Let's roll." It became a rallying cry, a symbol of courage in the face of certain death. The passengers armed themselves with whatever they could find: food carts, beverage containers, even their own courage. They coordinated, charged the cockpit, and struggled against the hijackers in a desperate attempt to regain control of the plane. Every second mattered. Every decision could save lives. Meanwhile, air traffic controllers and military personnel were tracking Flight 93, but no one could intervene in time. The heroism unfolded hundreds of miles above the Earth, invisible to the world until it was too late. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed violently into an empty field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The impact was catastrophic. Every soul on board was lost. But thanks to the bravery of those passengers, the plane never reached Washington, D.C. The intended target was spared. The Capitol and the White House remained untouched. The heroism of Flight 93's passengers became a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the human spirit. Ordinary people had faced unimaginable terror, and despite knowing their fate, chose to act selflessly to save countless others. Across the nation, families and communities mourned, but they also honored these heroes. Their final words, their decisions, and their courage became an enduring symbol of defiance against evil. Even in death, the passengers of Flight 93 had written a chapter of hope amid tragedy. In a day marked by destruction, they demonstrated that heroism could rise from the most desperate circumstances. At 9:59 a.m., the world watched in stunned silence as the South Tower of the World Trade Center began to fall. It was impossible to fully grasp what was happening. A colossal structure, a 110-story monument of steel and glass, crumbled into itself in seconds. From street level, the sight was apocalyptic. A wall of dust and debris swept across Manhattan, swallowing cars, streets, and people in its path. Windows shattered miles away. Smoke billowed into the sky, turning the morning sunlight into an eerie golden haze. The roar of collapsing steel echoed through the canyons of the city, a sound no human had ever truly heard before. Inside the towers, chaos reigned. Tens of thousands of workers scrambled for stairwells, many carrying co-workers, friends, or strangers. Smoke and fire made breathing nearly impossible. Some stairwells were blocked. Elevators were destroyed. Panic and courage intertwined as people ran toward survival, guided by hope and the faint memory of safety procedures drilled into them over years. Firefighters and police officers, already responding to the first impacts, rushed toward the buildings despite the evident danger. They entered the South Tower to rescue those trapped inside, climbing stairwell after stairwell, often unaware that the tower was minutes from collapse. Many never returned. Their bravery became one of the defining elements of that day. Just 29 minutes later, the North Tower began its descent. Unlike the South Tower, which had been hit second, the North Tower had been burning longer, its structure weakened from the inside. The fall was equally terrifying and unstoppable. Manhattan shook, windows shattered across the financial district. The streets became rivers of dust and debris. People who had watched the first tower collapse realized in horror that the twin they had relied on for orientation and safety was gone. The aftermath was devastating. Thousands of people were trapped or unaccounted for. Rescue teams navigated through chaos, fires, smoke, rubble, and bodies, with a determination that would become legendary. Ordinary citizens helped in every way they could, lifting debris, guiding others to safety, and providing comfort where possible. Many risked their lives. Some did not survive. By 10:30 a.m., The skyline of Lower Manhattan had been irreversibly transformed. The Twin Towers, symbols of American strength, prosperity, and ambition, were now piles of steel and concrete, surrounded by smoke and ash. Streets were impassable. The air was thick with dust. People were running, coughing, crying, or silently watching the destruction, unsure what to do next. The city that had seemed untouchable now faced one of its darkest hours. But even amid the destruction, acts of heroism, resilience, and unity began to emerge. Firefighters continued to climb, medics continued to treat the wounded, and survivors continued to help each other escape. The collapse of the towers was not only an event of destruction, it was a crucible that revealed the courage and humanity of those who faced it. Across the globe, the world paused. From Tokyo to London, from Paris to Buenos Aires, people turned on their televisions and radios, hoping the images were wrong, hoping it was some surreal mistake. But the truth was undeniable. America was under attack. In offices, homes, and streets, silence fell. People held their breath as towers crumbled on live television. Families checked on loved ones. Friends reached for phones. In airports, terminals were frozen in disbelief. Planes were grounded mid-flight. Pilots held their breath as air traffic controllers redirected aircraft across skies now shadowed with uncertainty. Leaders convened emergency meetings. The president, the vice president, members of Congress, and the Pentagon were immediately alerted. Every government in Washington was in crisis mode. Decisions had to be made quickly, decisively, without full knowledge of what was unfolding. But even with the best preparations, nothing could have readied the world for this scale of terror. Stock markets, the engines of the global economy, reacted instantly. Trading floors went silent. Deals paused. Currencies wavered. The financial heartbeat of the world was suspended, if only for a moment, by the weight of the events. Meanwhile, families waited desperately. They called homes, offices, and hospitals, hoping for reassurance. Many never received it. The dead and the missing spanned all walks of life: office workers, flight crews, first responders, and everyday citizens. People from over 90 nations were among the 2,977 innocent souls lost that day. The grief was immense, immediate, and universal. Communities that had never interacted felt the weight of sorrow together. Memorials spontaneously formed across cities. Candles were lit, vigils held. News outlets chronicled acts of bravery, passengers fighting back, firefighters charging into flames, strangers helping strangers. In the face of unfathomable destruction, humanity showed its capacity for courage, compassion, and resilience. Air travel, once routine, was halted. Borders tightened. Security measures that had seemed unimaginable became standard overnight. Airports transformed from places of convenience to fortresses of vigilance. Governments worldwide reassessed intelligence networks, security protocols, and emergency response systems. The ripples of September 11th reached far beyond the United States, touching every corner of the planet. From that morning forward, nothing would be the same. Buildings would rise again, but the skyline carried new scars. Policies would be rewritten. Hearts carried the weight of loss and a profound awareness of vulnerability. Trust in innocence had been shaken. Yet amid the tragedy, the world discovered unity, solidarity, and hope. September 11, 2001, became a marker in history, a day when the world stopped, collectively mourned, and forever remembered the fragility and resilience of life. The names of the victims, the stories of the survivors, and the bravery of the first responders would echo through generations, reminding humanity that even in darkness, courage can shine. Out of the ash rose courage. During unimaginable destruction, ordinary people became extraordinary. Firefighters ran toward burning towers while everyone else fled. Police officers and paramedics entered collapsing buildings, risking their lives for strangers they would never meet again. Office workers guided each other down smoke-filled stairwells, comforting children, elderly co-workers, and colleagues with words of reassurance that felt impossibly brave. Passengers on hijacked flights fought for their lives, and the lives of countless others. On Flight 93, Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, and their fellow passengers became symbols of defiance and heroism. choosing to resist certain death in the hope of preventing further devastation. Their courage, calm under terror, inspired the nation and the world. Strangers became heroes. People who had never met each other lent hands, voices, and strength to one another. From the streets of Manhattan to emergency response centers across the country, humanity revealed a resilience that no destruction could diminish. Amid devastation, hope persisted. The 9/11 Commission, established months later, meticulously investigated the attacks. Its findings were stark. Intelligence agencies had failed to connect the dots. Coordination between government departments was flawed. Security protocols were inadequate. Warnings had been missed, and opportunities to prevent the tragedy had been overlooked. The lessons were painful, written in the blood and tears of thousands. Yet the report revealed something more profound than failures. It revealed resilience. The United States, and indeed the world, demonstrated an ability to rebuild, reorganize, and recover. Policies changed. Airports became fortified. Counter-terrorism efforts intensified. Information sharing between agencies improved. Nations collaborated. Structures were reinforced. But the true legacy was human. The capacity to endure, to help one another, and to rise above fear. The Twin Towers may have fallen, but they could not erase the human spirit. They could not diminish courage, compassion, and unity. Communities rebuilt. Memorials were erected to honor the victims, reminding future generations of both loss and heroism. Annual commemorations ensured that those who perished and those who risked everything to save others would never be forgotten. Across the country, ordinary citizens carried forward the lessons of that day. They volunteered, they shared, they comforted, they remembered. The attacks had intended to destroy, to divide, to terrify, yet in many ways they strengthened bonds between people. From the streets of New York to classrooms, workplaces, and homes around the world, individuals learned the profound truth. Even in the face of terror, humanity can rise united. September 11, 2001 will forever remain a day of tragedy, heroism, and reflection. The names of the victims, the bravery of first responders, and the defiance of those aboard the flights became immortalized in history. Out of destruction rose courage. Out of fear rose unity. Out of death rose resilience. The Twin Towers may have fallen, but the human spirit did not.